they for sure had the respect of us. Kevin Willis was a good player, and Dominique and Doc Rivers and Spud Webb came off their bench.
I think I can safely say that considering the stakes, the 7th game against Atlanta in 1988 was one of the greatest games ever played in the history of the league. Bird was having an okay game up until the 4th quarter. Kevin Willis came over and said, "Hey, don't let him score tonight." And Bird, standing next to him, looked at him like, "What are you doing?" His eyes got big. Bird gets it in low, the turnaround, Bird gets up, and Bird is there. Bird comes free, Bird for the left. That's what Larry Bird himself said about Game 7 against Atlanta in 1988. And Bird didn't throw around compliments lightly. But what made this game legendary? It wasn't just the stakes. It wasn't just the Celtics' legacy on the line. It was Larry Bird versus a cocky instigator. I feel I can stop Kevin Willis. He's tough, but you gotta know how to play him. See, the Hawks were red hot that day. They had momentum, they had swagger, and they had Kevin Willis.
And we blew our opportunity with the Celtics in Game 6. We should have won that series in 6 games. Tough shot at the end of the game.
But then he made a huge mistake. Willis poked the bear, and what happens when you poke Larry Bird? You get the 4th quarter ride of your life. By the time the final buzzer sounded, Willis was left with one brutal reality check. Let's talk about that day. I know what you're thinking. Kevin who? Trust me, you're not alone. Kevin Willis isn't exactly a household name today, but don't let that fool you. Drafted by the Atlanta Hawks in 1984, Willis had one of those quiet but legendary careers with over 16,000 career points, 11,000 rebounds. And here's the kicker. He played more NBA games than any player not in the Hall of Fame. That's wild, right? Back in the late 80s, Kevin Willis wasn't known for his longevity. He was known for being a physical enforcer, the guy who didn't mind mixing it up in the paint. At the time, the Hawks weren't some bottom-tier team. Led by Dominique Wilkins, they were young, fearless, and on the rise. Meanwhile, the Celtics were on the end of the story, a battle-tested dynasty, trying to squeeze out another run before time caught up with them. So, when the Celtics and Hawks faced off in the Eastern Conference semifinals, it was youth versus experience, fire versus tradition. The Celtics came out swinging. They won the first 2 games and took control of the series. Kevin Willis was in his usual form. With just over 3 minutes left in the game, Willis delivered a nasty face rake to Kevin McHale. You can guess how that went down, and just like that, the series went from a competitive battle to personal. But here's the thing, the Hawks didn't back down. Far from it. They got in game. Now Rivers, look left for Wilkins, gave the no-look pass, and Atlanta came roaring back, winning the next 3 straight. Suddenly, the Celtics, with their dynasty on the line, were on the ropes. One more Hawks win, and Larry Bird and the Celtics were out. You know they for sure had the respect of us. Kevin Willis was a good player, and Dominique and Doc Rivers and Spud Webb came off their bench. They were a deep team that could score the ball, and if we weren't at our best, we were in trouble, said Bird. Game 6 in Atlanta was the Hawks' moment. They had the chance to end it all, knock out a dynasty, and cement themselves in history. And they almost did, but they blew it. We blew the opportunity with the Celtics in Game 6. We should have won that series in 6 games. It was a tough shot at the end of the game that got the win for them. The last play in Game 6, Dominique and I were the 2 guys that scored. I called a timeout because they knew what we were running. We called another one, and they inbound the ball to Cliff Livingston. He was supposed to dribble handoff to either me or Dominique, but DJ read it and topsided me. Cliff looked at Dominique, and then he went on his own and shot a left-handed hook. Boston has won the game. Bird, at the end of the game, made a bold prediction to the press. He said, Atlanta blew their opportunity. I'm guaranteeing a win in Boston. They have a big chance to beat us. I think now that we're going to come out and play like we did tonight, but we're going to be at home. Our shots are going to be dropping a little bit better, and we're going to be running a little bit faster. So I'd say Sunday is going to be a big win for the Celtics. Game 6 gone, and now all roads led to Game 7 in the Boston Garden. Larry Bird had guaranteed a win, and trust me, the city took it personally. The Celtics were fighting for more than just a playoff spot. They were defending their legacy, and the fans, they were ready. What happened next? Well, it wasn't just a game, it was a showdown. Bird versus Wilkins. Can you top this? A clinic of offensive basketball, shot for shot, possession for possession, neither of them backing down. But for the first 3 quarters, Bird struggled to keep up with Wilkins. Dominique was on fire, and the Hawks' game plan was simple. Find Dominique, feed Dominique. And let me tell you something, if there was a 3-on-1 or whatever, Dominique got the ball in the last 4 minutes. I knew exactly what was going on. I've been around Nick enough to know when he was on fire. When Nick's on fire, people will never give Nick his due. He was one of the greatest defensive players to ever play our game. He scored in so many ways and was literally unguardable. But then you needed wings to play in this game because what started as a gritty physical matchup turned into an airborne duel between Larry Bird and Dominique Wilkins. In the 4th quarter, it was basketball theater, 2 legends going bucket for bucket. But none of this would have happened if one guy hadn't poked the bear. And yeah, we're looking at you, Kevin Willis. See, Dominique Wilkins knew what was coming the second it happened. He only had 12 points going into the 4th quarter, and Kevin Willis, so it was Kevin Willis, me, and Larry running down the court, and Kevin took off, put his hands in front of me and said, "Don't let him score tonight." I looked at him and thought, "What are you doing? You don't wake up a sleeping giant." His eyes got big, and I remember they took me out for a blow, and Kevin and Cliff Livingston came in the game. Kevin got hot, and Coach said, "Nick, go out there, stop him." I thought, stop him? He's hot now. Forget that. The only thing I can do is try to match him bucket for bucket. And that's what turned out to be one of the greatest 4th quarters ever. Larry Bird walked into the 4th quarter with 12 points, and by the time the game ended, he had 34. But it wasn't just how much he scored, it was how he did it in that final frame. Bird went 9 of 10 from the field and dropped 20 points. For Larry, it was left-handed hooks, turnaround fadeaways, pull-up jumpers in transition. Bird was pulling moves from his entire bag. Dominique couldn't believe what he was seeing. Man, he was doing a little bit of everything. I don't know what he was doing in that 4th quarter. The stuff he was doing was unbelievable. He was throwing left-handed shots, running hooks. His game was at another level. We were trying to match each other's will. It was just a game of who was going to hit first. Johnson gets it into Bird, and Wilkins is there. Bird comes free, Bird for the layup. The 4th quarter wasn't just Bird versus Wilkins, it was a back-and-forth shootout for the ages. In the first 7.5 minutes of the quarter, the Celtics had the ball 13 times and scored on 10 possessions. The Hawks, on the other hand, scored on 11 of 12. The score was tied 9 times. Neither team could create separation, and Boston's strategy was simple. Larry was hot, and he was feeling it. So, it was just, get the ball to Larry and let him make the read, because if they come double, he's going to make the right play. Birds will broke Atlanta. Boston pulled out a 118-116 win, completing one of the greatest comebacks in playoff history. Series legacy intact, and that's the day Larry Bird showed a cocky instigator who's boss. Kevin Willis poked the bear, and Bird responded by delivering one of the greatest 4th quarter performances in NBA history. It wasn't just a game, it was a statement. Because if there's one thing we've learned, it's this: when Larry Bird takes something personally, there's no stopping him. Take it home, ride back to Boston, and if you want more legendary Larry Bird stories, you don't have to go far. Click play on this next video. NBA legends share the first time they faced Larry Bird. Trust me, those stories, they're just as crazy.